Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rohit. Uh, so my talk is titled 30,000 Sunrises. Actually, this was the idea for my blog title, but that's not there existing yet. So any guesses on why 30,000?
80 years, 180 years.
Yeah, exactly. So if you convert your, let's say, assuming you live 80 years, if you convert that into days, you approximately see 30,000 sunrises in your life. So this is about how. So it's kind of like how do we live our lives, or uh, what how do we live a good life? So that's the topic. So I'm going to start off with yeah, is the, yeah. Are you have a pint-sized insights?
Yes.
Yeah, please come. So I'm going to start off with my kind of like favorite model that I keep talking about, which is Maslow's hierarchy. So if you look at the model, you can actually differentiate it into kind of two parts. I've only written about the kind of what you call what human needs or basic needs, and these are the higher needs. And it's because what happens is that these human needs are almost universal for all of us. There's no debate on it in the sense that if you don't have these things, you're obviously not going to live a good life because it's very integral to who we are. But these higher needs are something that's debated in psychology, things that are vary a lot from person to person and depend a lot on our characters, our upbringing, the kind of people that we are. So first let's try to get the basics right? So let's focus on the human needs. And there's really not much to talk about here, but sometimes we miss out on the basic things in our life. I've kind of made this huge checklist for myself, which is just like as a sanity check, because oftentimes when we feel like life is not going well, it's actually a very mundane thing. You might not be eating healthy, you might not be sleeping enough, maybe your mental health is not in the right space, and you really have to design your environment and make these kind of inculcate these habits. So before we can, become philosophers and talk about the purpose of life, we have to cover the basics, right? So there's no point in talking to a beggar about philosophy because it has no meaning to it. So you start with the basics. So okay, let's say that your basics are covered. I tried to kind of like for the higher needs. Now we're moving on to the higher needs. How can we break this down, right? So we start off with what constitutes it. What are the features of the activities, right? And what I mean by features is like, let's say that you like badminton, right? You enjoy it. But even if you enjoy it, there are certain ways that you have to do it that ensure that you're happy doing it. So that could be that, are you playing with the people that you like, right? Are you going when you want to? So at a time and a place that you want to. Are you good at the sport or are you getting better? So these kind of things are kind of intrinsic and can be applied to a lot of the activities that you engage in life. Right? So that's what I mean by features. Then, of course, what are the common challenges that we face, and what are some strategies that we can follow to combat it, right? So, question for all of you guys. So, let's say that all the basic needs that we talked about initially are covered for you. You're happy with where you are in your life about that. Let's say you also, I'm giving you let's say some amount that makes you feel financially secure. It could be a different amount for each of us. Let's say, assuming, let's say 50 lakhs, right, is in your bank account, it's been transferred. So, given that your needs are met, you're financially secure, what are the things that you would like to focus in your life? What are the things that you'd like to spend on? And it's an open question. You can just say ideas that pop into your head. Just
time with my family.
time with family. Great.
Time with friends.
Time with friends.
Travel.
Sorry?
Travel.
Travel. Nice one.
Local calendar, which is not like scheduled from 8 to 8 evening. It's a local calendar.
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to work on myself.
Work on yourself. Nice.
Learn a new skill.
Learn a new skill. Nice.
No different scopes of basic.
Nice. Yeah. And I think we all kind of relate to all of these answers, right? I think a part of us wants to do each of these things. So, if you kind of break it down, right, you can. It's very ambitious of me to say that all human motivations can be broken down to these 5 aspects, but you can cover a lot of it, right? And so, if you were to think about it, let's starting with hedonism. Hedonism, someone said travel. So travel, things that are sensory pleasures, right? Like eating good food, you know, watching a movie, traveling. That is hedonism. A sense of purpose. I was expecting someone to say, I want to volunteer more, do that. But okay, but I think we we can accept that. I think purpose is also a big motivation in our life. What we feel is purposeful. Personal growth and actualization. So Shweta mentioned that we'd like to work on ourselves. Curiosity and learning, of course, and relationships. A lot of time with friends, time with family. So, if we think about this, and in terms of, for example, our careers, right? If you so you need money to satisfy all the basic needs we saw before. That's a granted, right? But more than that, let's say that you start earning more than that, then what happens is that we tend to what can you trade money for in these 5? If you think about it, you can't trade it with any of these 4. All of these require work that you put in, decisions that you make in your life, right? You can't improve your relationships, you can't improve your understanding of the world, you can't grow and get better at the skills that you like, and you can't develop a sense of meaning with more money, right? But what you can do with more money is that you can travel more, you can eat more good food, you can upgrade your lifestyle, right? So the question I try to ask myself is that, like, let's say that I have the salary I have now, and I have let's say, uh, the 50 lakhs that we talked about, right? Would I spend the next 4 or 5 years of my life wanting to double that or triple that to 1 crore or 1.5 crores, and then spend more of it in my life, or do I want to focus on these other 4 aspects? Which is the better trade-off in terms of my well-being, right? And often you see that it's money is not helping you, and you're often more satisfied and happier with your life focusing on these 4 things. And I'm saying these as 5 things, but of like, as you all mentioned, gave different answers, and you're probably relating to different aspects of these. This is a very multilateral thing. We all want multiple of these things at the same time, and it also changes as we go through life. So if you can find some synergy between these, right, that's amazing. Because if you can find a job that gives you a sense of purpose, where you're actually growing and applying your skills, and you have good people to work with, right, that's something that's going to increase your well-being a lot compared to something that just gives you money, right? So there's synergy, and of course all of this is something that requires a deep level of introspection into what it is that you truly value, right? Because I could be someone who really values relationships, and for a sense of purpose, I mean, it's nice, but maybe it's not super essential for me, right? So it's really depends on your personal makeup, your character, the way you view life, right? So you have to kind of customize it in that sense. So I talked about features, and so each of the activities that you might do, like even a career, right? There's this kind of set of characteristics that you want for each of those activities. And then one thing that's like really important for me, and maybe a lot of you, is autonomy, right? The sense that you are working on what really reflects your values and what you want to do at that time. Because oftentimes we get into these relationships, like even with work, with the people in our life, with family, where it's more of a give and trade. You're doing something because you want money, or because you feel it's a responsibility, or feel it's a duty, and often you lose your autonomy in such situations, and that can tend to lose you lose a sense of well-being in that case, for some people at least. Mastery, competence. We want to be good at the things that we do. I think pretty self-explanatory. Relatedness. In the things that we do, where people are involved, we want to have a positive social environment, right? It really does. I mean, even imagine if you're working on a cause that you really love, but but the people that you're working with are horrible. You're still not going to enjoy that. You're not going to feel that sense of purpose in your life. So the people that you surround yourself with are important. And of course, the sense of integration that we talked about. This is multilateral. You're trying to balance different things, right? So you want to always make sure that you're not going too hardcore on anyone, and because what then happens is the other things start to fall apart. So cool. So all of this was very theoretical, and because I'm trying to keep it as high level and as comprehensive as possible, so that we can all drill down for our individual lives. But here I'm trying to go into maybe for our generation, for my experience, my friends' experiences, about things that are really challenges that we face. How can we get over them, right? So starting off with, so this and this are kind of tied in, and the way that I think about this is that a lot of what we believe and what we decide to do is not something that we consciously choose. Oftentimes, it's something that we kind of absorbed or internalized as we were growing up. It's part of either family, societal pressure, cultural, things that you just kind of absorbed and accepted as true. And only if something major happened in your life do you actually start questioning it, right? So, but what happens is that you, with these very external motivations, is that it kind of masks your authenticity and what you really want. So once you start dropping those things that you just kind of picked up without much consciousness, what you really want starts coming up, and that's what will really make you happy. So you kind of need to really introspect, develop this a sense of introspection where you're also thinking about what are these core beliefs, and it's really hard because it's something that's very close to your identity. It's hard to even imagine it, but with enough time, you start realizing what those are and whether those things are actually conducive to you or not, and whether you believe you can actually let them go and adopt something else, right? Status and ego. Throughout this talk, I never mentioned anything about respect. I never mentioned anything about success. I never mentioned anything about, mostly not wealth, things like that. Because all of these are kind of like status games that we play, in the sense that it's always about, it's nothing innate in you, but it's your place in your peer group, in society, how you're viewed by others. And if you spend some time on it, you realize that this really doesn't have any value. You're just trying to please someone else, or your culture just taught you that it's right, but it's really not. You realize it doesn't really add much value to your life. Distractions. We are the social media, Instagram generation, of course. So we know what it means to have our attention hacked. So that's something that. On the one side, there's your attention being hacked, and the other side, there's your motive being hacked. So, in the sense, by motive, I mean that you have a set of things that you want to focus on, goals, whatever it is, but many a times you get sidelined by it. You just go on with the routine flow of life. You don't have the will or the know-how or the courage to actually change the present situation, right? So, delayed gratification, habits, discipline, all these are really important. Delayed gratification, there's a lot of research on how this is really positively correlated with well-being, a good life, higher income, all of that nice stuff. There's this famous marshmallow test that I don't have time to get into, but I recommend YouTubing it. It's really fun. There's like kids involved and marshmallow involved. It's really nice. Beliefs and framing, we've covered that. Desire and attachment. So if we kind of go to the what I talked about, the kind of dimensions of well-being, and in that, if you look at the top two in position, it's relationships and it's hedonism. And these two are actually the most susceptible to desire and attachment. And like we talked about a career that focuses on money, that then trades hedonism, right? What happens is that there's this human thing called hedonic adaptation. That if you're given the same stimulus multiple times, the amount of neurotransmitter response that you get from your mind, the dopamine response, serotonin response, keeps getting lower, right? So that's why if you're an extreme example is like if you're into alcohol or drugs, you need to keep upping the dose to get the same response from your brain, right? So what happens is that hedonism in general is something that's not really good to optimize for. Uh, you want to pair it with novelty, trying different things. You want to space things out, and you don't want to take a very naive approach that I want to party every weekend and drink and then have the greatest food, and then what that does is it creates a craving, right? Where when a weekend or a couple of weekends you don't have that and you feel miserable, and you feel like something is missing out, and you're always thinking about that craving in your mind, right? So that's about that. And fear. So, like we talked about, oftentimes I think it's better to have a life that is really bad rather than one that's mediocre. Because one that's really bad will motivate you to get out of it, to make a change. Because that situation is untenable. You can't live like that. So you're really motivated to make that change. But if something is mediocre, you're like, maybe next week I'll think about it. Maybe I'll do something about it sometime later, next year, 5 years later. And you're just living your mediocre life. So I think sometimes it's beneficial to think of life almost like an experiment, where there's nothing that you actually need to do, right? Apart from your regular duties to your family, that you need to support yourself. Everything beyond those basic needs that we talked about is just, it can be viewed as just experimentation. You're trying out different things, seeing what makes you happy. Don't be afraid of failing, and because you don't really care about what society tells you, or that you actually failed, right? It's just another experience for you. And then you try something else and try something else. And then you find the couple of things in your life through this experimentation that you really enjoy, and then you do it. And all of this is not going to happen unless if you have this fear and if you don't have the confidence to actually try new things, right? Without thinking too much about the consequences, or overthinking, oh, career should be like this, and all these ideas. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you. And yeah, I'm not like a psychologist or anything, so I'm not an expert. So, but if you want to talk about something, we can talk about it now.